Lord, we do thank you once again, God, for the opportunity that we have to open up your word, to study your word. And Lord, I just ask that you would speak to us as we watch and look at Paul, Lord, doing what we call doing life. I pray that it would just minister to our hearts. And Lord, we would begin to understand the depth of your love for us, the depth of your desire, God, to use every single one of us, Lord, in our different realms of influence. And Lord, the places we go, the places we walk, Lord, we want to honor you. We want to glorify you. So I just ask, as we watch and learn from this guy we call Paul, Lord, that Lord, it wouldn't just be stories that we listen to, but God, it would be you effectively working in our hearts and changing our hearts. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, as Paul began his journey to Jerusalem, if you remember, as he's going and as he got closer, everybody was discouraging him. Remember, they're saying, Paul, you don't want to go there. Here's what's going to happen. Even to the point where those who were traveling with him said, you don't want to go. Because here's what they said, you're going to get to Jerusalem, you're going to be bound up, this is not going to be a good thing. So when he got to Jerusalem last week, we were reading that, what happened? He got bound up, he got in trouble. And you know, I can hear some of those guys in the background, although they're not recorded in Scripture, saying, I knew that was going to happen. We told you, right? And those are always the great friends to have around. And listen, so now listen, he's bound up, and they accused him of certain things. Now, here's what I love about what we're going to look at today. Bottom line, what we're going to read today is Paul giving his testimony. And I think, personally, our testimonies are one of the most powerful tools that we have for evangelism because of this. Someone can't argue with your testimony. Your testimony is your testimony. And they can't say, no, that didn't happen when you know it did. Now, having said that, though, our testimony also, because it's very subjective on what happened to us, our testimony also needs to be backed up with Scripture and facts, some objective truth. And that's what we're going to learn from Paul. So for some of us, this is going to be a great lesson in how to give our testimony. We're going to read this and we're going to go, oh, okay. And then for some of us, we don't even know Jesus today. It's going to be a good day to get introduced to him and find him through reading what went on in his life. So as Paul shares this, listen, I want you to think about your own opportunities that you have to share your testimony. Now, if you remember, we left off, they were beating on him. The commander came and saved him. He's going up the stairs. Remember, he's going up the stairs, and Paul turns to the commander and goes, can I say something to the people? I love that, right? Like in the middle of this, Paul goes, can I stop? Can we stop here? I want to say something. And remember that he spoke Greek to the commander? And the commander goes, you speak Greek? And he goes, yeah, now check out today in verse 1 of chapter 22. He says, brethren and fathers, hear my defense before you now. Now here's an interesting thing. 5 different places in Scripture we have the testimony of Paul's salvation. The actual happening of it in Acts chapter 9, then here in Acts chapter 22, and then in Acts chapter 26, and then he talks about it in Philippians chapter 3, and then also 1 Timothy chapter 1. Listen, this is powerful. And Paul is beginning to explain, and he tells them, hey, I want to listen to my defense. Now, that word for defense is a word that we get apologetics from. It's apologia in the Greek. And sometimes when you talk about apologetics, people go, we don't have anything to apologize for. It's not that. Apologetics means that you're going to give a defense for your faith. In other words, Peter tells us that every single one of us need to be able to give an answer for the hope that's within us when somebody asks us. And then I love it. Peter says, and also we need to do that with meekness and humility. But can you give somebody an answer for the hope that's within you? Can you give them, number 1, your testimony, but number 2, biblical reasons why you believe what you believe? That's what Paul's about to do. And I love it. And then listen, as he does this, here's what blows my mind. Notice he says brothers and fathers. Back in Acts chapter 7, there was another guy that gave his testimony. And he was beginning to share with the whole crowd of Jews around him. Remember his name? Stephen. Do you remember who was at Stephen's stoning? Paul, yeah. Saul. Right? He was there. Now, here's what blows my mind. He starts out almost the same exact way that Stephen started out. Do you think that years ago, it's been like almost 20 years ago, do you think that impacted Paul's life? That he's starting almost the same exact way that Stephen started. And listen, man, he says that, and then here's in verse 2, it says, and when they heard that he spoke to them in the Hebrew language, they kept all the more silent. Listen, Paul spoke to the commander in Greek because that's what he spoke. And he turns to the crowd and he speaks to them. Actually, it's in Aramaic, but listen, he speaks to the Jews in their heart language and they're blown away. Now, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the commander is going, who is this guy? Right? And it sort of blew my mind because the commander arrested him in the first place. Why did he arrest him? He didn't do anything. He's the victim, and now he's arrested. And then he turns around, he speaks to these guys, and here's an important thing. He speaks to them in their heart language. You see, I think it's important when we're doing outreach of any kind. Listen, if you don't speak the language of the people you're with, find somebody to interpret for you, to speak the thing that speaks to their heart. Listen, Paul could have carried on in Greek. He could have, but no, he went to their heart language. And now all the Jews are going, wow. Now, I believe, personally, by now some of them are recognizing this guy. Some of them are kind of starting to see. Remember, there's a crowd of people around there. And he gets their attention. He says, hey, I want you to listen to me. I want you to hear what I have to say. Then, what was he accused of? Remember what they accused him of? Remember the three things? They accused him of, number one, speaking against the people. They accused him of speaking against the law and against the temple. Now listen, Paul's going to answer every one of those accusations by giving his testimony. That's what's interesting. He's not going to answer, hey, I love the Jews, Listen to what he says. Look what he says here in verse 3. I am indeed a Jew. Does that sort of blow your mind? Listen, Paul has been born again for about 20 years now. But he's still a Jew. Why? Because he's a Jew. He doesn't practice Judaism for salvation, but listen, he's a Jew. That's who he is, and he's not denying that. He's not going to deny his people. He doesn't come against his people. So imagine their shock when he says, listen, I am a Jew born in Tarsus of Cilicia, brought up in this city at the feet of Gamaliel, taught according to the strictness of our father's law, and was zealous towards God as you all are today. Here he gives his credentials. That had to blow their mind. Listen, not only am I a Jew, and yeah, I was born outside of the country, but where was I raised? What does he tell him? At the feet of Gamaliel, the number one, the best known, the most articulate rabbi, I think, of all time, but especially of their time. He's saying that, listen, by saying that, he goes, I was under the best of the best. That's who I was trained by. He's looking at them. None of them probably standing there that day, or at least most of them, they weren't trained. They weren't even trained, much less trained at the feet of Gamaliel. And what does he say, man? I was zealous for the law. I was there. I was trained under the law of our fathers, and I was zealous just like you guys. And then he goes a little bit further, and it says in verse 4, I persecuted this way to the death. It's interesting, we're still calling Christianity the way. Isn't that interesting that even Paul calls it that? And I went after this thing we call Christianity. I persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering into prisons both men and women. Listen, I was arresting people. I killed people, right? And then he says, and also the high priest bears me witness, and all the council of the elders, from whom I also received letters to the brethren, and went to Damascus to bring in chains, even those who were there to Jerusalem to be punished. Listen, I got letters. Now here's what I love. Now Paul calls out the chief priests, and he calls out the whole Sanhedrin. He goes, they're there, they know. They gave me letters. They know who I was. Now imagine, again, this crowd, I think some of them are bumping each other, elbowing each other. You know how you do when you're in a crowd, right? Some of you do it with your spouses here. What's he talking about? Who is this guy? It's interesting he hasn't given his name. He's given his pedigree. He's given his past. And you know something important? I think our past can be important in our testimony, but I want you to notice how quickly Paul went over his past, right? Some people glorify their past. Hey, if you were born again and you had a horrid past, don't glorify it. Just kind of give us, the tip of it, and he'll move on. That's all he does here. And I did all of these things, and then I got a letter for Damascus. Now, listen, that gives him that natural shift into what happened in his life. I'm on my way to Damascus. I'm doing these things. And he tells us then in verse 6, now it happened as I journeyed and came near Damascus at about noon, suddenly a great light from heaven shone around me, and I fell to the ground, and I heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? We went over that when we looked, and you can go back and read Acts chapter 9, and there's a couple things we're gonna relate to. You can look at that. But listen, when we did Acts chapter 9, it's always amazing to me that when the Lord knocked Paul down, what did he say? Why are you persecuting me? Not why are you persecuting the church? Not why are you persecuting my followers? Why are you persecuting me? You see, because when people come against us for our Christianity, they're coming against directly the Lord Jesus Christ. You know, that should, number one, that should give us a lot of hope, I think, and it should let us realize that how attentive he is in our lives. And I'm thinking this guy's laying on the ground. Again, my opinion is he was on a horse and got knocked off. Some people go, dude, it doesn't say he was on a horse. I know, but I think he was. It's a long journey. I think he got knocked off. I think he's flat on the ground, and he hears this voice. Do you know what that had to do to Paul? Do you know what that had to do to this guy that is bent, that is so focused, so determined to stamp out the church that he's going to go as far as Damascus to go after people? And now he's flat on the ground and he hears this voice saying, why do you persecute me? Now listen, here's what I love. So I answered, who are you, Lord? Now listen, he didn't know like Lord Jesus Christ. He just knows somebody knocked him to the ground. You know, we can skip the horse thing if you want. Just knocked him to the ground. Here's what he knows. That guy, whoever it was, knocked him to the ground, so he's going to call that person Lord, right? You're going to show him some respect because you're on the ground. And he said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. That had to blow his mind. We talked about it last time, right? Can you imagine? I mean, just stop and think for a moment. You're this guy, and we're going to talk about it in a moment, but I think he was instrumental in the execution of Stephen. I think Paul was a leader in that execution. Now, he says he made people go to their death. He says he's imprisoned people. He did all of those things, and he did it knowing that this guy named Jesus was dead. Now, he encounters this individual on the road to Damascus, and this person says, I am Jesus of Nazareth. Just let that sink in for a moment. You're who? Well, I'm Jesus of who? Jesus of who? No, you're supposed to be dead. You were hung on a cross. They put you in a tomb. Yeah, I know. Your followers said you got out, but we all know that was a big scam. Or was it? You're who? I'm Jesus of Nazareth. Wow. I mean, imagine your world getting rocked. Again, I think we read some of this stuff and we kind of take it too nonchalantly, thinking, well, yeah, that would happen. And think about this guy that time, and he tells him who he is. And then listen, verse 9, he says, and those who were with me indeed saw the light and were afraid, but they did not hear the voice of him who spoke to me. Now, some people, I love it, do you ever talk with people about the Bible and people say, I don't believe the Bible because it's full of contradictions? You ever share with people like that? Any of you? Yeah, you know what? When people tell me that, I have a little bit of advantage. People tell me that, and I go, okay, it's full of contradictions. I've been studying the Bible for over 20 years, not just reading it, studying it. So if you could enlighten me to any of the contradictions, I would be happy to listen to you. And then I love it. They always go, well, I don't know where they're at. They're just there. And I go, well, come on. Either you know where they're at or just give me one. I said, you said it's full of them. I only want one. Just give me one. Well, some people go to this. In Acts chapter 9, it says that they heard the voice. And here it says that they didn't hear the voice. And they go, see, there it is. Well, once again, original language helps here. In the original language, in Acts chapter 9, it's talking about a voice being heard. Here, when it says they didn't hear the voice, the terminology used here is they didn't understand what was said. What was said came out like gibberish, or, have you ever been in a room full of foreigners? People speaking another language, and you're sitting there going, I have no idea what they're talking about. Just now when we were in Cuba, I got caught several times and by myself with people, and everybody's talking, and I'm going, wonder if they're talking about me. So you listen close for your name. You hope, well, if my name pops up, I'll know. And I knew what the term was for Potter, so I'm listening for those things. But listen, they didn't understand. Yeah, they heard, but they didn't understand. And so Paul says, listen, they're there, and then here's the clincher, verse 10. So I said, what shall I do, Lord? Listen, that should be anybody's response who is born again. When you are born again, your response should be, what do you want me to do, Lord? Yet so many of us, here's what a lot of us do. We get saved, we want to add the Lord to our agenda. We don't want to follow his agenda. We want to bring him into what we're doing, what we're planning, the direction we're going. And oftentimes we do that, and then we ask him to bless it, and he's like, excuse me? Yeah, we're going to go do all this stuff, Lord. Well, I thought I was Lord. No, you're just with me. We're just calling you that because it sounds good. It's a good Christian term. I love Paul. What do you want me to do, Lord? When have you just gotten really, really still, really, really quiet, and just sat and said, Lord, what do you want me to do? And not just asking him, but asking him with the intention of following whatever he tells you. What do you want me to do, Lord? And then you go do it. That's some people go, that's insane, Pat. No, here's what it is. It's exciting. So what do you want me to? I love it, man. Paul's first thing, man, he knows. Paul's converted right here. And what do you want me to do, Lord? And here's what the Lord said to him. And the Lord said to me, arise and go into Damascus. Listen how great this is. What do you want me to do, Lord? I want you to get up and go to Damascus. You know what I found with the Lord? He very rarely changes our whole scope of things into something radical that we never dreamed would happen. Oftentimes people will say, I'm afraid to ask the Lord because he's going to tell me to go to some place that you don't want to go. And when people tell me that, I'm afraid he's going to tell me to go whatever. You plug in some country, let's just say Siberia or something like that. You plug that in and I'm not going to ask him. What if he tells me to go there? I always tell him, yeah, that's the kind of God we serve. He wants to make you as miserable as possible. He wants to absolutely ruin and make your life chaotic. That's sarcasm. Some of you are looking like big eyes. Listen carefully. What do you want me to do, Lord? What did the Lord tell him? I want you to go to Damascus. Check this out. Think about this. Where was Paul headed? To Damascus. Right? It's okay, listen, here's what I found. He usually gives us something that's attainable. It's not something that's not attainable, something that's so far away, so crazy that we can't do it. Here's what he's saying. Paul, finish your journey. That's it? Yeah. Now, here's what's spooky about that. There's going to be step 2. But you got to do step 1 to find step 2. And step 1's usually, people, once again, we've talked about, people act like finding God's will for our life is some complex thing that we need to do, and we need a bunch of people around, we need decoder rings, we need all of these things going on, we got to figure out because he's hiding everything from us. That's not the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible reveals to us, but he does it in such a way where it's a progressive revelation. As we are obedient, then he gives us more revelation, and we're obedient. He gives us more revelation. We're obedient. And listen, so many of us, we freak out, and we don't even do the little things, and then we wonder why God's really not guiding and directing us, because you're not taking that first step. Hey, Paul, get up and go to Damascus. That's what I want you to do. It's that simple. Dude, it blows my mind. Abraham. I love the story of Abraham. Abraham. God calls Abraham. Abraham, Abraham. Yes, Lord. He says, I want you to go. Okay. Where? Just go. Seriously? Yeah, just start walking. Now, that's not real hard for any of us, is it? Well, some of us have a hard time walking, but moving. Listen, again, he just says, just start, and I will guide you. And didn't he guide Abraham every step of the way? So, Paul, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to Damascus, and I love this. Listen, go into Damascus, and there you will be told all things that are appointed for you to do. And since I could not see for the glory of that light, listen, a lot of us would use that for an excuse, right? I would go to Damascus, but I'm blind. I'd do it, Lord, but I can't see. I love Paul. Listen, since I couldn't see, he gets people to guide him, right? So he says, being led by the hand of those who were with me, I came to Damascus. And then, listen, here's what I love. Then a certain Ananias. Notice, here's what's interesting with this testimony. He doesn't say a certain man named Ananias, does he? What does he say? A certain Ananias. You know what that tells me? That tells me the people around Jerusalem, they knew Ananias. Because he says, a certain This Ananias, listen what he says about him. That certain Ananias, a devout man according to the law. Oh, you guys think I'm anti-law? I just told you I was trained in the law. Now I'm telling you this guy who was devout according to the law. I am so not against the law. Paul never taught against the law. He taught against using the law for salvation, but he never taught against the law. He says, here's this devout Ananias, a devout guy, and I think some are going, yeah, we know Ananias. He comes into town every once in a while. He says, listen, according to the law, having a good testimony with all the Jews who dwelt there. Oh, that guy came, that guy. And listen, he came to me in verse 13. He came to me, stood and said to me, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that same hour, I looked up at him. Now, that's the incredible healing part of Paul, right? He just came and he says, hey, Paul, you open your eyes, receive your sight. And Paul goes, it happened. Now, I'm in Damascus. What am I supposed to do? Here's the part I love. Listen. Then Ananias said to him in verse 14, the God of our fathers. You know what? You might underline that. The God of our fathers, not? He doesn't even say the Father of the Lord Jesus Christ. Who is it? The God of our fathers. He's including people, right? That God, because you said I spoke against Moses, and this place, we'll talk about that in a moment. But it's the God of our fathers. Now, here's what I love. Has chosen that you should know his will. God has chosen, Paul, that you should know his will. Now, listen to me carefully. I think that is true for every person in here who is born again. God has chosen that you should know his will. It's not some mysterious thing. It's not something he's hiding from you. It's not like a hide and seek thing. It's not like, hey, when you get good enough, when you get, holy enough, when you get these things, then I'll reveal my will. God has chosen you to show you his will for your life. Do you know that? Do you believe that? I do. Listen, there's some people who go, oh, you got to wait till you're mature. What on earth does that mean? Some of us are never going to grow up. We were in the back room and we were talking about some stuff just before the service, and I'm not going to tell you what we were talking about, but it had to do with ink. But anyway, we were talking about it, and I said, I just think I'm a little too old, to go in some directions. And somebody there was kind, said, age is just a number. And someone else says, but Pat has a lot of those. So, it's kind of the thing. So maybe that's mature. I don't know, but listen. Some people do that. Well, if you're mature enough. Some people tell you got to get holy enough. How holy is holy enough? Listen, if we're waiting to get holy enough, I think if you're really honest with yourself, you'll never feel holy enough. God desires to show you his will. He's chosen you to give you his will. He wants to work in our lives. He wants to use us. You know, I remember years ago when I was first saved and I went to a Bible study. Some of you have heard this story. And I went to a Bible study and we were talking about a certain word. And somebody brought out, now most of us use phones or apps or computers now, but somebody brought out a concordance. Remember Strong's Concordances? Any of you guys remember those? Most of us have one, yeah? Man, and I remember these people brought out, and I'm impressed just because it's a big old honking book, right? It's like huge, and I'm going, wow. Remember in school, I didn't read much. It's amazing what God, does and changes your life and stuff, but, I was anti-book. So seeing somebody with a big book, I went, wow, that's impressive. And then they kind of open it, they put it on the table, and they open it. And they're looking up, and they look up this word, and they give the definition. And I went, well, that's kind of cool. I think I want one of those, And then I go, well, what's that number beside the word? Do you guys know how it works, right? Because all the words are numbered according to Hebrew or Greek, and they're numbered, and then you look them up in another part. And I'm not exaggerating. Here's what they told me. Oh, you're not mature enough to know that. Here's what I'm thinking. Seriously? Here's what, I'm right then and there, I'm going, bet me, I'm going to go get me one of those books. I'm going to get me one of those books, and I'm going to find out what that means, because you're not going to tell me I'm not mature enough to understand that, you poor little Christian boy, And so, listen, man, I went and got me a Strong's Concordance. Listen carefully, it's not complex. It's just a number related to words in the back that will give you definitions and how they're used. Listen, and I'm going, you told me I wasn't mature enough for that? All my point is, some of us play that game. God wants you to know his will. Now, I believe a lot of us miss it because here's what we want. We want God to reveal to us not just the immediate, because that's all, listen, number one, that's all he's going to give you. But we don't want that. We want the whole plan, because we want to see the plan, and we want to see how it's going to work out, and we want to know whether we're going to approve it or not. God's will for your life is not whether you approve it or not. You just walk in it, so then we get messed up. Some of us want to know how the needs are going to be met, how all the supplies are going to come, how are things going to work out. And God says, all I want you to do is go to Damascus. That's all I want you to do right now. Yeah, but... And then listen, we get derailed for a while. Listen carefully. Follow what he puts in front of you and take the steps. God, he says, you were chosen. Paul, you were chosen. And I think this is for all of us, that he has chosen that we should know his will. And then I love this, and see the just one and hear the voice of his mouth. Listen, he says, Paul, you're going to see the just one. And some people are going, didn't he already see the just one? Well, he kind of saw the just one. He saw the glory. But listen, I believe, in Paul's testimony, he talks about spending 3 years in Arabia in the book of Galatians. He talks about he was 3 years in the desert. I believe when he was 3 years in the desert, I believe that was his training. I believe that was some Paul one-on-one time with the risen Lord Jesus Christ pouring into him. Now, some people can disagree with that, and you're welcome to. But do you remember when they were picking a replacement for Judas? Do you remember the requirements? You had to be with him. Paul was never with him. Paul had to get that time with him. How long did they spend with him? 3 years. Paul had 3 years to make up. Listen, I think he got that one-on-one time. I think he got that special time with the Lord because of his special ministry. But he says, you're going to see that just one, again, which was a messianic title, and you're going to hear the voice of his mouth. And then he tells them, for you're going to be witnesses in verse 15. You will be witnesses to all men of what you've seen and heard. Paul, you're going to go. It's going to be bizarre what happens to you. And you know what? It all started by going to Damascus. That's where he had to go. And for you and I, man, listen, today after church, I want some of you to go to Damascus. Not Damascus. But take that first step with the Lord. Go to that place he's telling you to go. Don't wait for the feature-length movie of what he's going to do with your life. You get that afterwards. Start walking now. You know what this thing is called? It's called by faith we serve him. If you want everything planned out and everything outlined and everything done for you, then you're not walking by faith, you're walking by sight. It's called walking by faith. So he says, listen, this is what you're going to do. And I think Paul's going, you're nuts, dude. And then verse 16, I love this. And now what are you waiting for? Arise and be baptized. I like that, man. Hey, Paul, listen. You've called upon the name of the Lord. We're going to discuss that in a minute. We know you're saved, man. What are you waiting for? Let's get wet. I love in the New Testament, in the book of Acts, oftentimes it seems like people get saved and dunked all at the same time, right? Sometimes I wish we had like a thing that we could just go, people, commit their lives to the Lord and it would just come up. And we go, okay, time to get wet, right? What are you waiting for? Listen, Ananias, what are you waiting for? And he says, he says, arise and be baptized and wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord. Now, I want to be specific. The baptism isn't washing away his sins. The calling on the name of the Lord washes away his sins. The baptism just represents what happened to him. And again, it's worded that way in the original language. He's not saying you get baptized to wash away your sins, because there's people who begin to buy into that. And that's called baptismal regeneration. Listen, if you're not saved when you get baptized, you're not going to be saved after you get baptized. You're just going to be a wet sinner. The water does not save you. The blood of Jesus Christ saves you. Calling on the name of the Lord. So listen, he's telling him that. And then I love this. And then Paul says, verse 17, now it happened when I returned to Jerusalem. Now check this out. What was he accused of? Speaking against the people. He's already said, man, I'm not speaking against the people because I am the people, right? Speaking against the law. I'm not teaching against the law. I know the law better than most of you know the law. And I'm hanging out with people who know the law. So I didn't do that. And then what was the other thing? What was the other thing? Speaking against the temple, right? Now listen, this is great in his testimony. So here's what he says. Now, it happened when I returned to Jerusalem and as I was praying in the temple. Oh. You were what? I went to the temple. Where would a Christian go when they were first saved in the first century at that time? Where would they go to fellowship? The temple. Why? Because that's where everybody went. And Paul goes, man, I went to the temple. I was praying at the temple. Some of us is that okay? Yes. Don't get all uptight. Sometimes as Christians, we get way too uptight about things. Somebody did this. I remember one time a group of us were standing around. This guy just got saved. He had been saved like 2 weeks. And we're all standing around in the crowd. And he goes, it sounds like karma to me. Man, the Christians went like this. And they're scattering like he said a horrible word. And I'm thinking, chill out, people. He got saved like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, but he said karma. Well, I know what he said. But just take a chill pill. Let's minister to the guy. Let's grow him up. Let's change his terminology. Let's fix him a little. God's got some work to do, right? And he's got work to do in every one of us. So some people get, why was Paul in the temple? Because that's where he went. What was he doing in the temple? I was praying. And then listen, then he tells them, he says, hey, as I was there and I was praying in the temple and I was in a trance and I saw him saying to me, make haste, get out of Jerusalem quickly, for they will not receive your testimony concerning me. Remember, we studied that and we looked at that, man. The Lord told Paul, you need to get out of here, man. Don't hang out here, right? And so Paul split and went out. Listen, then verse 19. So I said, Lord, they know that in every synagogue I am imprisoned and I beat those. Here's what Paul's doing. I want to stay here. Have you ever kind of really dug into the Apostle Paul? Paul never wanted to go where he went. He wanted to minister to the Jews. Why? Because he was a Jew of the Jews, right? He's thinking, I can reach these people. So listen, he's telling him, Lord, all these people, I should be here. I love it. When we ask the Lord what to do, he tells us and we argue with him a little bit. All of us, even Paul. Right? Lord, I need to stay here. Why? They know that in every synagogue I'm imprisoned and I beat those who believe on you. What a crazy testimony. How would you like to sit next to somebody in church who beat on Christians? Kind of a scary thought, isn't it? Ask the people around you if they, no, I'm kidding. Listen, he says, I beat on them. And then verse 20, and when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I also was standing by, consenting to his death and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. And I think, listen, again, I think Paul was the leader in this. I think he was guarding the clothes because he was the guy that gave the order, gave the command. And he goes, I was there. So he's telling the Lord, I should stay here because here's what's going on. And then the Lord said to Paul, verse 21, depart. Listen, God's telling Paul, just stop it. You're not going to minister here, right? Stop it, depart, for I will send you from here to the Gentiles. Paul, I want to send you all over the world. I don't want you to be here. And then, verse 22, and they listened to him until this word. And then they raised their voices and they said, away with such a fellow from the earth, for he is not fit to live. Seriously? What did he just say wrong? He said the G word, Gentile. And they come uncorked. Now you got to remember, again, where are they at? They're still in the temple, remember? They're in the temple precinct. They're on the steps going up to the Antonia fortress. All of those people were convinced that Paul brought a guy. Remember, they were convinced that he brought Trophimus in there, a Jew. He didn't do that. And by the way, he never argues that point because he knew he didn't do it. But now listen, now he says Gentile, and it's like, man, here's what they're saying. Did you hear what they said? Get him off of the planet. We don't even want him on the planet. We want to kill him, stick him in a rocket, and shoot him far away. He can't stay on this planet. I'm thinking that's pretty drastic. Like, I've had some people mad at me and say some mean things, but I never had anybody say, we want to rid the earth of you. That's kind of heavy, right? It's intense. I'm thinking if I'm Paul, I'm a little upset right now. We want to rid the earth. And then verse 23, then as they cried out, they tore off their clothes and they're throwing dust in the air. Listen, remember what was going on when they came and they, quote, arrested Paul. They were dragging him, they were beating on him, there's a huge riot going on. Remember the commander, Claudius Lysias, we're going to read later on. He came in, he got him because he doesn't want this huge riot on his watch, and he's taking him out. He gets him to the steps. Paul goes, oh, excuse me, can I say something to these guys? Okay, go ahead. Now here's what's crazy. What language did he use when he talked to them? Hebrew or Aramaic, right? What language did Claudius speak? Greek. So now you're the commander, you got this guy, and I don't know how long his speech took. It wouldn't have taken too long if you just read this, but it took a while. And then all of a sudden, your riot started all back up again. And here's the bad thing. You don't know what was said, right? Because you didn't understand the language. Now you're Claudius thinking, ay, 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 ay. And you got these people, man, now listen, they're more angry than they were at the beginning. They're ripping their clothes off. They're throwing dust in the air. They're telling, get rid of this guy. Get him off the planet. What do you do, man? If you're Claudius, what do you do? This is kind of a scary situation. So look what he does. He says, someone's buying coffee. So someone way over here is like, you're not sitting over there. You don't get coffee. So... Whoever that is, if you're visiting, you really don't have to buy coffee. But we do have a rule that if your phone goes off, you have to buy everybody in your row coffee. But, okay, so listen, man, these guys are uptight. They're yelling, they're screaming. And in verse 24, listen, the commander ordered him to be brought into the barracks and said that he should be examined under scourging that he might know why they shouted against him. And so they bound him with thongs. Listen, here's what he does. This part blows my mind. Paul's the victim, right? He's the one getting thumped on. He's the one getting beat. He got arrested once, then it's kind of laxing a little bit. Now they arrest him again, and now here's what he says. We need to torture him to figure out what he just said. Now, I got to ask something. Why don't you just ask him? Why don't you just say, dude, what did you just say to those people? Like when I'm in a room and something goes in and it's all in a foreign language and everybody either laughs or cracks up, I just stop the conversation. What was just said, right? Did somebody tell me what was just said? And I mean, if I'm the commander, I'd go, Paul, what did you... No, here's his plan. I'm gonna torture this guy till he gives it up. And when he's talking about scourging, listen, we know from reading about when Jesus was scourged, listen, it wasn't just the 49 lashes like the Jews gave. It was a whip. It was on a wooden handle and had many different leather strips coming off with bone in them and with metal in them. And listen, when they would beat a person and when they said they tied him with thongs, they've got him bent over so his back is bent and exposed so the skin will rip off that much more. Listen, this was a torture thing. We're going to make him speak. And so we want you to beat him. Listen, we want you to beat him. And they go, okay, man. So they're tying him to this pole. Listen, they're tying him to this pole in verse 25. And I love it, man. Paul, look at this. And Paul said to the centurion who stood by, hey, can I ask you a question? Do you get the idea that there's this calmness in his heart? This calm, this peace that surpasses all understanding. He's about to be scourged, and he goes, can I ask you a question? Sure. What's up? What's up? Before we beat you, he goes, hey, I just want to know something. Is it lawful for you to scourge a man who's a Roman and uncondemned? Just curious. Just wondering. And the guy panics. Look at verse 26. When the centurion heard that, he went and he told the commander saying, I think we're in serious trouble, bro. Right? He says, listen. He says, tell him. He says, listen, take care what you do because this guy's a Roman citizen. Oh, the commander. Claudius is going, oh, we shouldn't have done this. Once again, driven by emotion. Listen, and then the whole time I'm thinking, Paul, you are a crazy man, right? And then so, listen, now the commander comes. Claudius comes to him. Then the commander came and he said to him, tell me, are you a Roman? And Paul goes, yep, sure am. I love it when he pulls the Roman card, don't you? Remember when he did it in Philippi? Remember when he was locked up and he had, hey, can I ask you something, man? Why are you bugging us when we're Roman citizens? You're a Roman citizen. Now, I don't know what they carried. I don't know what they did to prove it. You know, I'm sure they didn't have ID cards. Now, some people say you would have never lied because lying about that citizenship would have been an instant death penalty. So I don't know. But listen, are you a Roman? Yeah. Then the commander, I love, man, check out Claudius. He's this little, then the commander, here's what he said. Hey, with a large sum of money, I obtained my citizenship. Here's what's implied there. Dude, I had to bribe. You couldn't just buy a citizenship, but you could bribe people. And here's what he's saying, man. I bribed. It cost a lot to get this, and I'm looking at you, and you don't have that kind of cash, right? That's what he's saying. How could you be a citizen, man? I had to pay a lot of money for mine. Did the price go down? Did I get ripped off? You know, how did you do it? And then Paul says, oh, well, you need to understand something. I was born a citizen. Oh, that's even worse, right? It's one thing for a guy to bribe somebody and become I was born a citizen? Oh, excuse me, sir. Don't you love it, man? Now, listen. And here's all Paul's friends going, we told you this is going to happen, dude. We told you, man. Now look, now they're getting ready to beat you. Yeah, well, I'll pull my Roman card. So he lets them know, listen, and the commander's going, I don't think we should have done this. Listen, then immediately, verse 29, those who were about to examine him withdrew from him, and the commander was also afraid after he found out that he was a Roman and because he had bound him. So listen, he's going, we need to dial all this back, and then here's what they do. They all go to bed for the night. Because that's what you do when you're a little confused and you're a little messed up. Just sleep on it, let's get up in the morning, and maybe this was just a bad dream, right? And then immediately, then verse 30, the next day, because he wanted to know for certain what he was accused by the Jews. So here's what's going on. Claudius still doesn't know what happened. And once again, I'm thinking, why didn't he just ask him? Obviously, he's talking to you. And listen, so the next day when he didn't know, he says he released him from his bonds and he commanded the chief priests and all their council to appear. And he brought Paul down and he set him before them. Now, is this nuts or what? What did Paul say when he's talking to the Lord? I don't want to leave here. I want to witness to these guys. What's he gotten to do so far? Well, he got a whole crowd in the temple that he got to share Jesus with, right? And then now, listen. Now, who is he going to appear before? The chief priest and the Sanhedrin. Paul is sitting there thinking, this is awesome. I never thought this was going to happen. I never, ever thought. And look at what just happened. A lot of us would be mad at God about now. Because why? Because things didn't go the way we thought they should go. But you know what? Everything's going exactly to God's plan. And here's what's crazy. Paul knew that. How did he know that? When you take those steps of faith, they become steps of obedience. And as they become steps of obedience, then you begin to understand more of God's will. And here's what's great. And then you trust him more. And you trust him more. And you trust him more. And I found in my life, man, the more he reveals to you, the more you trust him. And then the more he reveals to you, and the more you trust him. And by now, Paul's at a point where, why am I before the Sanhedrin? Because that's exactly where God wanted him to be. Now, he's going to testify before them. We're going to stop here this week, and that comes next week. Another kind of jump-off point. So you have to come back to hear the rest of the story, or you could read your Bible. But we'll finish this. But listen, I just want to challenge us. Are you willing today to get up and go to Damascus? That's the question. If you're not, listen, if you're not, that doesn't mean you're a horrible person. It doesn't even mean you're a horrible Christian. Here's what it means. You personally are not ready, but here's what I'm going to challenge you. Then you get on your knees before God and you get yourself ready. And you get to that place. You get to the place, and I want you to get before him, and I want you to get to the place where you can tell him with your whole heart, God, anything you want, I want to go do. And then surrender to him. You know, we're celebrating veterans. And I think it's great to be a veteran of America, of the armed forces in America. Last night I said Army, and then I got dirty looks. I had to say Marines, Air Force, Navy. Had to get them all in there. I think it's great. Listen, I think it's great to be a veteran of the armed forces. But there's a bigger army. There's a better army. I want to be a veteran of that army. I want to get done, and I believe most of you do. So you know what? Go to Damascus. Get up and go to Damascus. Let's stand up and pray. Father, we do look at this, and Lord, it is amazing. It's amazing that as we just read a simple testimony, yet it turns into such a phenomenal witness, Lord, not just to that group of Jews, but Lord, to that commander, to those soldiers, and even greater than that, generations later to us. And it's an encouragement for us to follow you and to love you. So, Lord, I pray that today we would be a group of people here, and Lord, we would just surrender ourselves. We would say, here we are, Lord. Use us. Let us be those vessels, those instruments that you're going to use in this generation, Lord, at this time. So just give us those, even if it's a mustard seed of faith, God, that we'd take that mustard seed of faith and we would plant it and apply it and watch it grow and watch our lives change. Thank you, God. Thank you for letting us know you and be part of what you're doing. And I'm going to ask you to stay in an attitude of prayer for another couple moments. And if you're one that I spoke of earlier, maybe you came today and you don't have that relationship, so you can't, in a sense, go to Damascus. Well, you know what? Today is the day of salvation. And I want to challenge you right now in this moment to call on the name of the Lord. That's all Paul did, is he called on the name of the Lord, and his sin was washed away. The Bible's very clear that we're all sinners. We've all sinned against God. And that sin, listen, that sin separates us and keeps us at a distance from God. And the only way we're going to get close to God is for that sin to be taken care of. And the only way that's going to happen is through the blood of Jesus Christ. So today, if you don't have that relationship, call on the name of the Lord, and here's the great news, man. Your sins will be washed away. Your guilt and your shame will be gone. So if you want to do that, I'm going to help you out. I'm just going to say a prayer. You can say it with me out loud. You can say it silently. But let it be the cry of your heart today. Maybe you're watching online and you don't know Jesus. Say this prayer with us. Jesus, today, I confess to you that I am a sinner. And I'm sorry for my sin. And right now, in this moment, I'm asking you to forgive me. Jesus, thank you for dying for me. Thank you today for your forgiveness. And right now, I'm asking you to come into my heart and change me. Jesus, I want you to come into my life and guide me. I'm asking you to be my Lord and my Savior. If that's the cry